Kia ora and welcome to CIO Leadership Live New Zealand. I'm your host, Kathy O'Sullivan, editor for CIO New Zealand, and my guest today is Donna Sanders, Director of Information Security and Technology Operations at Computer Concepts Limited. Hello, Donna. How are things in Wellington today?
Kia ora, Kathy. Things in Wellington today are pretty good, actually. So I think the rain's passed through and it looks like we've got another break in the weather.
Nice. Good to hear. That's unusual for Wellington. First of all, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what your team at CCL does?
Sure. So I have the privilege of being the Director for Information Security and Operations for CCL. So I have a pretty broad and varied role. So a large part of my team run the largest sovereign cloud in New Zealand, so across all of government and commercial customers. So we have a large customer base with big, large, complex environment that we run. Also sit across the information security teams for CCL. So we have a consulting arm, our CDO, security operations, so all of those kinds of things that feed into information security. And then conversely for that, I also run the team that have our internal corporate security lens. So on top of the other things that I do, I'm also the CISO for CCL. And then to round out my role, I also run the service desk teams, the data center teams, and our software and integration teams. So very broad, diverse role working with some pretty amazing people. So yeah, I really enjoy it.
Huge role, a lot involved there, and no doubt you're dealing with organizations all the time who are moving from on-premise to cloud and transforming their operations. And the word transformation, it's thrown around as a buzzword, as if it's something that's just a given, but in reality it is quite hard. So how has that approach taken shape in your own career?
So I think you've hit the nail on the head there, where the IT industry is transformation. So we are consistently transforming all of the time. So when I think back to how I started my career, I started off as a LAN administrator for Novell NetWear, which doesn't even get used anymore. And then we kind of moved to virtualization. We've moved into cloud. Windows was a new thing at one point in time. Now we're really, to your point, kind of going from that edge to cloud and the hybrid cloud. And what does the ecosystem for our customers look like across that whole range? So I think transformation is really about being really clear on what the next state looks like, and then understanding where you are now, and then setting some key milestones and delivery so that you're actually really clear on where you're going and what are the key things that you need to do to get there. And some of that will be technology, some of it will be processes, and some of it will be people and our people talent, and what skills and things do we need to help us move things forward. And then when I think about CCL and our aspiration is to be the most trusted hybrid cloud provider in New Zealand, really understanding our customers and what they need to transform to get there, and then helping them on that journey and understanding the key things that they need to deliver, and then working alongside them to help them get there.
So you've touched on this a little bit there, but walking back from the end product of transformation, are there any, you touched on a few of them there, what are the key steps, and do you think there's ever kind of a starting point to start a transformation?
So I think understanding where you currently are is actually really important. So when I put on my information security and CISO hat, we've certainly had lots of CIOs come to us. There's been a lot of high profile cyber events happen within the New Zealand landscape, and a lot of our customers are coming to us and asking, am I secure? And I think, like, understanding that, you actually need to understand where you currently are. So we'd, for example, in that area, we'd go in, we'd do an assessment, do a maturity assessment, understand where you are, and then set a vision for where you need to be. I think other transformation is exactly the same. So actually, what areas are you trying to transform, and set the direction, and then set the key deliverables that you need to deliver to get there.
But of course, there are roadblocks and challenges in any transformation. And what are some of the common ones that you that are top of mind for you in a transformation?
So I touched on it briefly before in terms of people, process, and technology. So I don't think it's always just one thing. And then I think COVID certainly has set its own level of challenges that we're all working through at the moment. So 2 years ago, none of us were really flexible working. So yeah, I think being really clear on the priorities, there's always going to be more work than there is people and resources to do it. So we're constantly making trade-offs as we go, and any business is going to be doing that. So being really clear and laser focused on the things that are a high priority, setting those OKRs or those key things that you're measuring against, so that as we're making decisions, we're actually constantly asking ourselves, if we invest in this thing, or if we deliver this piece of work, does that help us get through to where we need to be?
I love that point about there's always going to be more people, or there's always more work than there is people. I think that's so true, and a lot of CIOs will resonate with that. So then, Donna, how do you view transformation? Do you think it should be seen as a project with a deadline and deliverables and milestones, or do you think it's just an ongoing development within an organization?
So I absolutely think it's ongoing. As I touched on right at the beginning, we're not administering Novell networks anymore. Windows is not a new thing anymore. Virtualization is certainly not new. So I absolutely think it's an ongoing thing. And as we introduce our planning into our regular cadence, the things that we're doing for FY23 will not be the things that we're doing for FY25. So consistently and constantly looking at what we're doing, what are the things that are going to shift the dial, and then how do we build our people talent to help us get there? How do we define our budgets and the things that we need to do to get there? How do we empower our teams to get on and deliver the things that we need to do? So no, I think that transformation is an ongoing thing. And I think that's actually what makes working in the IT industry a really exciting thing, is that we are constantly evolving and changing.
Definitely. And I guess IT was such a proponent of agile and the agile's way of working. And it's just, it's bleeding into other organizations now as well. So then when it comes to your own role as Director of Information Security and Technology Operations, in what ways do you collaborate and influence the leadership team at CCL?
So I think any leadership role, collaboration is actually really important. So when I think about CCL as a leadership team, we will do those regular planning activities and the regular check-ins. And then as a group, it's really important that we agree jointly what all the priorities are, because, as we were saying before, that the war on people talent and the resources that we have is real. So we actually do need to be really clear as an organisation, what are the things that we need to collectively do to move the dial. So if I think about, some of our aspirations where we look at being the most trusted cloud provider, being one of the greatest places to work, when we agree as a group the initiatives that we're going to jointly tackle across all of the organisation, because actually no business unit or organisation does things in isolation. So being really clear, building those relationships across the organisation, understanding who your key stakeholders are, and then making sure that you've got the visibility and the reporting and the insights so that you know that the things that you are doing are actually getting you where you need to be.
That's so true. And yeah, collaboration, especially at that leadership level, is so important in any CIO or CDO or CTO role, isn't it? So the role of CIO, it is evolving. A lot of people don't even use the title CIO anymore. And what do you think are some of the key attributes of a successful modern day CIO when it comes to leadership?
So I think that's a really great question. And I guess for me, leadership is about it's about a couple of things. So one is really about inspiring our people talent, making sure that our people understand why we're doing things, where we're going, how do we, I guess, remove the barriers and the blockers to let our really talented people get on and do the things that they need to do. Setting some direction, and then also keeping a bit of an eye on the industry trends and the things that are going on both within New Zealand and globally, so that we've got a bit of an eye to the things that might be coming that we need to be thinking about. And then there'll be things like COVID will come along, and all of a sudden everything we thought we were doing might have kind of moved and changed around a little bit. And all of a sudden we're pivoting to flexible working and making sure our teams are well supported to operate in what the new looks like.
So you mentioned the war on talent, and that's definitely a key issue for so many CIOs at the moment. And you also touched on the fact that you want to make CCL a great place for your team to work. So how are you creating that internal culture that really helps your people to thrive?
So, and creating that internal culture is really about creating a vision and then creating the opportunities. So, yeah, the war on talent is real. We've seen net immigration close down with the borders being closed. So actually the talent pool has been smaller. Most of our customers that we're talking to are kind of having that challenge as well, where the talent is not there. So I guess being really clear on who we have now, who we need, what those skills actually look like, and then working quite consistently on progression planning, succession planning, training plans, lining people up with mentors, making sure that it's not always the same person doing the same delivery. And sometimes that's taking a bit of a short-term hit to actually line people up and grow them from a more long-term perspective.
Now, you're one of the few women tech leaders that I speak to. It still is quite male dominated at that top level. So why do you think we don't have enough diversity in IT roles, and what practical things do you think can be done, A, to encourage more women into leadership in IT, but also just to get them in the door in the first place and encourage them to apply for those entry-level roles?
Look, I think that's a really great question, and you're right. So when I started in IT, women were very few and far between. It's not as bad as it used to be, but there still could be more of us. So I think working across the industry and probably working right at the grassroots level with the different education institutes, and probably getting in at the primary and secondary schools level to encourage people, well, certainly from a diversity perspective, we need to encourage not just gender diversity, but ethnic diversity as well. So we know when we get the diversity thing right, we get people that will come in and challenge us to think a little bit differently. We'll get the thought diversity that different groups will bring. So I think it's about looking at the roles that we have, and also actually looking at things like position descriptions. So we know that if we rewrite position descriptions, we'll actually encourage a different demographic to apply for roles. So we've just done something similar within CCL, where we've actually rewritten some of our position descriptions to encourage different people to apply, and we've found that that's worked really well. And then, yeah, I think how do we convey that actually the work that we do? So if I look at the Sovereign Cloud that we support within CCL, we actually support most of the large government organisations in New Zealand, plus some really large commercial customers. So the work that we do actually does impact everyday New Zealanders on the systems and the things that we help provide. So how do we tell that story really well, which makes it sound exciting for different people to get involved in?
And that's a great approach. So what words are you changing in your position descriptions to encourage more women or people from different backgrounds to apply?
I think it's about making sure that all of the roles don't have a specific technology focus, but are more around the types of skills and attributes that we're looking for. So, you know, I do a fair bit of reading around different things, and it's interesting that different words or different ways of phrasing things will encourage different people to apply. And we know that some women will look at a position description, and if they can't do 80% of the role, then they won't apply. So actually, how do we kind of remove some of those barriers and appeal to the skills and the leadership attributes that we might be looking for? Because actually smart people we can train and help upskill in different areas. So it's about appealing to, I guess, a wider group rather than the traditional real techie kind of people that will look at that and go, yep, tick, 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 I can do all of those things.
I love it. Real practical approach. So looking back on your own career, Donna, are there any kind of things that you look back on or mistakes that you made that really shaped you as a leader? And, you know, when you look back on it, they were actually, you know, a good life lesson?
So that's a really tricky question. And when I look back on my career and I think of the things that were career defining, or the things that actually, if I could go back, I would do differently, I think it really comes down to trusting your gut. So if I look at, there will be things where we might have gone ahead with things where there was a voice in the back of my mind saying, hey, we might not be quite ready for a cut over this weekend. All the voices are telling you that you've set the milestone you need to go. I think actually really listening to your gut, listening to your teams, I think is really important. Yeah.
Great. And is there any advice that you would have to aspiring IT leaders, particularly women, who might want to, you know, who really see themselves as a director of information security and technology one day?
So I would say be yourself. So, you know, especially if you are the only woman in the room, quite often, you know, that can be pretty daunting to some people. So I think being really clear on the things that you are good at is important. So understanding what you're good at, actually understanding the things that if you built a really strong team, what would those skills be that you would bring in to complement your skills so that actually you just create a really high performing team of all of the different skills, because no one's great at everything. So being really clear on the things that you are good at and what you bring, and then what you might need other people to come in and do to really round out that excellence of delivery.
And finally, Donna, can you tell us what's important to you in the months ahead?
So we've touched on it a few times through our chat today. So I think talent is a really big one. So understanding what are the skills and the talent that we need today, but also what skills and talent are we going to need to take us forward. So we've talked quite a lot about hybrid cloud. What do our customers want? So how do we kind of start to build out some of those skills that we know we're going to need in the future? Continuing to refine what the security offerings and postures look like to make sure that our customers are secure and available and doing all the right things. And then I think that real focus on efficiency. So we talked about it before, there's always more work than there are people and resources to do it. So the continuing focus on efficiency, what tools we might need to do there, how we'd automate, what skills we'd need to, again, do all of those kinds of things. And then I guess understanding what the new normal looks like, what is flexible working now, all of those kinds of things I think are kind of important, probably going to be for the next 12 to 24 months. So yeah, that constant transforming and evolving that we've talked about, I think is the ongoing continuum of what that looks like.
Absolutely, for you and many other CIOs. Donna Sanders, Director of Information Security and Technology Operations at CCL. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Kathy.